delay in marriage and remarriage rates and so forth are very much related. The psychology of the relationship between black males and females then has to be looked at within context. We have to look at the reality of the right behavior and wrong behavior in our relationship one to the other. What one should or should not do. And we really, as people, given the fact that we live in a very different social situation, have not really stopped to examine whether we should accept a lot of these moral rules and approaches that we do. They've not been brought up for examination. We are operating often on ways of expressing love. If you love me, you'll do this. If you love me, you'll make this world another with a different history and in a different economic situation? Or are you going to say, that's what a man's supposed to do? A man, regardless of the reality of his economic, social, or political situation? Or men, that's what a woman is supposed to do. What kind of woman? Under what kind of circumstances? Are we then operating on a set of rules, expectations, and perceptions that in no way reflect the realities that we're in as people, and therefore imposing these artificial expectations on each other and fighting and hurting each other and destroying our children and ultimately destroying our people as a result thereof? We got to ask that. And when you ask that and answer that, it's got to enter into the education of your children. It's got to enter into the redefinition of the relationship between black males and black females. We are cursing each other out over somebody else's rules and mores and attitudes and so forth. Often you see a culture lays these expectations down on us without a qualification. And they said, well, if you're in this position, maybe you need to modify this in this sort of way. No, this is what a man is supposed to be. This is what a woman is supposed to do, no matter what happens. And when they don't meet up to it, you got a right to call names, to walk out, to destroy children, and do all the other kind of things we do to each other. You see? In other words, in society represents itself in people. And this society represents itself in us.
So I wanted to let the whole thing play, and then we come back and take the chunks. But so you can hear in total what he was saying, because the clip isn't that long, so you can hear in total what he's saying. Mm-hmm. But now we're gonna go take the chunks and give a breakdown of it, because one of the first things, just before we even get deeper, one of the first things that stood out in my mind was how relevant he was saying is to where we are now in late June of 2022. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if he's holding a mirror up to where we are right now and showing us what's happening. But this lecture most likely was given in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So another thought that comes to mind, that given that this lecture was most likely in the 90s, and he could have literally conceived this idea last week. And it shows how much progress we haven't made as far as the black family, as far as relationships, as far as how black men and black women see each other. And it's also showing a constant decline in the way we interact with each other. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things for me is I agree with what you're saying. Dr. Amos Wilson is really good at being a technical TED, if you will, in terms of what does this mean? What does that mean? What's going on over here? How did we get to that definition? Mm-hmm. And that's a school of thought that's very much lacking nowadays. But when you ask these types of questions, you can see into the future. Because although they seem like common sense, Not a lot of people are asking those types of questions, and the ones that aren't getting the deference or the respect that they deserve for asking them. And so the other thing that to go back to one of the things you said that I find interesting is um that we could have this lecture, and there are even some lectures from others back in the 80s that kind of touch on this.
Yeah.
Um, but that's what happens when you take the information but don't take it to the application stage, when you don't go practical with it. And so people just absorb what these master teachers say, but don't really try to think about the next level or the next step or what can I do to put it into practice. And so now you have all of these master teachers being prophetic. And to me, it's like, no, they're not prophetic. We've just been stagnant for the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do want to. I do have to say this because it's Dr. Wilson. He was so brilliant, though. Dr.
Oh, yes,
Wilson
yes,
was
yes.
he was
Absolutely.
so brilliant. Go
And,
ahead. I know he's one of your favorite
yeah,
favorites.
he's he's definitely one of my guys. Like, coming in, I think I've listened to everything he's said. I've read everything he's written that I could get my hands on. Like,
Yeah.
I love this brother. And that's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why I'm not ashamed or scared to ask why, even when I get attacked for doing it. And I'm not ashamed or scared to try to take things to the next level, even when I'm attacked for doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, he definitely inspired a generation of thinkers. He definitely did that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take this piece by piece and break this down a little further and see how we can use this information to come up with solutions for ourselves for today.
The delay in marriage and remarriage rates and so forth are very much related. The psychology of the relationship between black males and females then has to be looked at within context.
You can stop right there. Oh, you
Right,
see,
right.
you on it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because it's the relationship between black men and black women it does need to be re-examined, and it does need to be re-examined in the context of where we are in 2022 and what is our overall goal as a people, and do we even have an overall goal as a people? Within this goal, what are we planning for men? What are we planning for women? What are we planning for children? A critical analysis of how we interact with each other does have to happen. I'm not going to say that I've done a critical analysis on the level of Dr. Amos Wilson. I'm not going to say that, but I have done my own anecdotal analysis of myself. You and I have done that with the conversation that we've had, analyzed where we are in the context of our times. What are my values? What are my morals? What are my thoughts on marriage? What are my thoughts on relationships? What are my thoughts on men? What are my thoughts on women? What is my level of self-esteem? What type of woman and what level of self-esteem, all those things that I'm looking for. I think all of that has to be taken into account. And when we don't take those things into account, we continue to run into a lot of the issues relationally that we continue to run into today.
Right. And so, because you could even go to the very first thing he said, where he's talking about the remarriage and the length of time, the delaying of first marriages, and
Right.
all of those things. There's a period of time, I believe it was before the 60s, the 50s and 60s, the 60s in particular marked the change in marital behaviors amongst blacks. Before that, black people got married earlier, and they had higher marriage rates, and their marriages lasted longer than anybody else in the country. And then if you look at the way we viewed each other at those times, in those earlier stages, it was different than the way we view each other now. It was more community, more family based.
Right.
And so without getting too much into the details of what happened, but it changed. The way we
Yes.
view each other changed. our ability to survive without depending on each other changed.
Change.
And so now we're in a situation where uh, everything changed, but our cultural lens didn't. Our expectations of each other
Right. Yeah. They
didn't.
didn't change. They didn't.
And
They never
so,
evolved.
right. And so, even as individuals and as individual genders, the way we view things began to change. But we never had a larger discussion about that change and about whether or not it changed what we needed
Yeah.
in a mate or in a
Yeah.
friendship or what we need men to be or what women to be. You know what I'm saying?
But I think that's another symptom of the overall issue of us over time not getting along.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking at blackdemographics.com, black women were from 1890 to 1960. Black women were more likely to get married than white women. They were more likely.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm right. They were more likely to be married, and it changed. Like from the 1960s, black women are now less likely to be married than white women. We know our marriage rates are around what 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 30% and 50% of black people have never been married. 6% widowed, 12% divorced, 3% separated. And so we can, we do have statistics to but we have statistics to back these things up about the declining trends in family within the black community. The premium on family, the value on family is nowhere near the same it was in the 1960s and beyond. Family does not hold the same value within Black America as it used to. And that's something that we have to get back to, because going back to one of the things we talked about last week with racism being a team sport. So in order to have strong teams, a strong team, we need strong families.
Right. Absolutely. Everybody needs support. And where you get that support from, the earliest teachings, the earliest support structures, the earliest of anything that is socially or culturally existing and developing in somebody's mind comes from their family. And
Yeah.
so if that's out of whack, then you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to bring up a generation that's out of whack, that's going to cause a lot of cultural devastation.
Yeah, and that's one of the things he does say later on in this, but let's push forward.
Mm-hmm.
We have to look at the reality of the kind of education both black males and black females deal with. We operate on assumptions about what is right behavior and wrong behavior in our relationship one to the other, what one should or should not do. And we really, as people, given the fact that we live in a very different social situation, have not really stopped to examine whether we should accept a lot of these moral rules and approaches that we do.
You can stop right there.
Oh yeah, we're on the same page. but
Go ahead, sir.
No, you continue, because he just same thing you were saying, reiterating what you were saying. That's along the same line mindset.
Yeah, because so when we look at how boys are educated, are inculcated or culturized to be men, and we look at how girls are trained up or culturized to be women, oftentimes those things are seldom put in relation to each other and the needs of the larger community that they grow up in.
Right.
So even if we talk about the big sixes or the 3 6s or whatever that's popping right now, amongst relationship circles that a man has to have, be over 6 feet, be make 6 figures, and have a 6-inch wangaline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's asking the question of whether or not that's relevant, realistic, or necessary for the community that we're trying to grow and develop? Is it realistic for us to say that black men, given the social construct that we exist in, have to make more than 6 figures? Is it realistic to say that black men, given the biological framework that all humans exist in, to say that they have to be over 6 figures, or I'm sorry,
Right.
have to be taller than 6 feet. You know,
Right.
so you go, and the same thing can be said for women. Is it realistic for us to say that a woman should be expected to stay home and take care of the kids and this, that, and the third, given the fact that most black men just don't make enough money to provide for that household? And that has nothing to do with necessarily their work ethic or their ambition. It might have everything to do with the social structures and the opportunities they've been given. So, but I'm not saying that these things are things that need to change. I'm just saying these are things that we can look at as examples and say, does this fit where we are right now? And if it does, let's rock with it and reevaluate later. If it doesn't, then let's stop with the foolishness and do something different.
Right. But also examining the cultural values and morals that we adopt and we stand on, and we built our culture, our individual and our collective cultures off of those morals and values. Whose morals and values are we building upon? We're most likely building upon morals and values of the people who conquered us, of the people who brought us here, of the dominant society. Right. So like when I was young, one thing that used to tick me off, like when I was young, is when they used to talk about etiquette, and they used to push etiquette. You need to learn etiquette. My first question was, okay, because at that time I'm knowledgeable of the plethora of cultures that exist around the world. Now I don't know how many exist, but I'm knowledgeable that the American culture isn't the only culture in the world. But my question is, why is white European culture and white European morals and etiquette seen as the foundation and something that we should build upon? I've even had debates with people about this, and they say, well, it's the majority culture, it's the pop culture, it's the culture that majority of people go with. And I'm like, you've never questioned that? You just gonna go with it blindly? That way, yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. Like, that is not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to examine, we're supposed to ask why.